You can now get a 30-day trial to experience The Athletic for free. Visit the link in the description below to try it now.
Hello, welcome to Tifo IRL. I am JJ Bull, and in today's video, we're going to talk about Leeds and look at why they're maybe not doing as well this season as they did last season. This is how Leeds look. It's either a 4-1-4-1 or it's a 3-3-1-3. That's the two kind of systems that Bielsa tends to play, and we're going to look at how those work, if there's anything different this season from last, and that's what we're going to do. And if you enjoy what you see in the video, remember to subscribe and you can give it a like as well, that really helps us out. So first of all, let's look at actually what is wrong with Leeds. So what's actually wrong with Leeds? I don't think there's a lot. If you look last season, they conceded more goals than Fulham, who are relegated, and they scored more goals than Chelsea, who finished 4th. Basically, it's a very high risk, high reward strategy and system that Bielsa plays, and it needs his players to be completely 100% on board with how the team works. If there's one small error, the way they play means that it can lead to bad things happening to them. Now, for context, this season, they've lost to Man United at Old Trafford, the first game of the season with fans back in stadiums. That was always going to be hard. They've lost to Liverpool, who are just brilliant this season as well. It's a 3-0 defeat. A couple of bad results against Newcastle and Burnley, sure. But they've had a real bad problem with injuries, and Leeds' squad is not amazing. They don't have great players throughout the team. And if they have to replace certain individuals, it can affect the way the system works. And if you look at the defensive side of the team, they've lost like Ayling, Llorente, Koch has been missing for a little bit of time. Then you've got players like Rafinha and Bamford who struggle with injury. There's a few more that they've had, but they've missed key individuals, and that's really affected the way the team's played. Also, Alioski left in the summer, so Junior Firpo has come in. And again, because he's not totally on board with the way Bielsa's teams play, and you think of the standard of player that they have, you know, they're not amazing. Like Jamie Shackleton's been playing at right back. He's fine, absolutely fine, but he understands how the team plays because he's had time under Bielsa. Firpo has not, and it'll probably take a little while before he's up to speed. If you think about team cohesion in video games, he's probably at about 40% or something like that. And that needs to improve before he'll be able to show his true colours. So that's kind of what I think is wrong, is those sorts of bits there. But let's look at how that applies to the actual team and how the system works. Now, I love watching Leeds play. It's really fun, it's really attacking, it's very back to front, because that's what Bielsa wants to do. He wants to get the ball from here to here as quickly as possible. It's not about playing through like really short passes or taking time. He wants to be able to take players from back to front very quickly. And the way they choose the system they're going to play is dependent on the opposition. It's a +1 system. So you see here, Struijk is a spare man. They've always had this. So if they're playing against a team with one striker, like in this example here, and playing a 4-2-3-1, they can play a back two. If they're playing against a team with 2 strikers, they'll play the 3-3-1-3 that I mentioned at the start of the video. We're going to focus on the 4-1-4-1 here now though. And regardless of shape, yeah, lots of energy. It's a man-oriented marking system, which we'll talk about just after this. But it's about verticality, and key to that is Calvin Phillips, who dictates a lot of their play. Now, when Leeds build up, they tend to build up with the fullbacks in the half spaces. The half space obviously being this sort of bit here. So you got wing space, half space, central space, and that applies to the opposite side of the pitch as well. Now, they build up like this, with the wingers wide and tight to the touchline, and the 2 8s, Rodrigo and Click in this example, push tight to where the striker is. So they'll get right next to here. When they move up the pitch, the wide forwards like Rafinha and Harrison or Daniel James they just bought, they're going to come inside and be able to help out here. And then there'll be rotations. So they might swap with Click, for example, moving out here, and Bamford might swap with Harrison to come in here. Positional rotation is very important to how they play in these situations. But also what you want to do is get the ball from defence to attack as quickly as you can. Now Phillips here as a 6 is key. He'll drop into positions to make sure that he can get the ball in space. But what he'll also do is hit long passes. He's got a great range of passing. What they'll sometimes do is drag teams to one side, like this, see? Here, Ayling, rather than playing short passes with Rafinha and Rodrigo, it's going to be difficult because they're quite well looked after, even though Rafinha is 1v1 with a fullback. So instead what they're going to do is always look to go backwards. They'll drag the team over this side, they'll go backwards from Ayling, and then, because of the way they've done it, they're going to have a winger in space who can get into this sort of position here. Now this is something Daniel James is very good at, but Phillips has the passing ability to make it. And that's what they can then do, is get these balls into someone in space and then attack from there. This is something that Bielsa wants to do, is isolate wingers 1v1 with an opposition fullback because he knows that they can beat them. But also what they want to do is get the ball, like we said, into someone like Bamford or a midfielder as quickly as possible. And one of the ways they do this is, again, with positional rotations. So in this example, I'm going to give you, like, Phillips might be here as a 6. Now, Click is marked here by this player, but what they'll do often is make little runs like this, which will drag this player with him, which then means that Harrison can come inside like this, which means that Dallas can go like this. And then by the time they've done this, Phillips can either put it into Harrison, or again, he's got this ball in here, because this run from Harrison is going to drag this player with him, or it might drag the opposition fullback with him. Everything they do with rotations and movement in midfield is to make sure that someone else is free, and they try and get the ball wide to someone who can then attack the fullback 1v1, and they create lots of chances. And then from there, the players push up, and they're able to keep the opposition pressed in and penned into their own half with a really aggressive high press, which brings me on nicely to how Leeds defend. So the way Leeds defend is absolutely key to how Bielsa's teams work. They play the high press, they keep teams penned in so they can't get out, forced to clear the ball, and they play a high line as well. But they also, the key feature, is a man-to-man orientated marking system. So most coaches will play a mix of zonal and man marking. So for instance, what you might have is Cooper here in a man-to-man system will follow a striker if he goes in because he's staying tight to him, man-to-man. In a zonal system, if this guy goes, it becomes this guy's problem. That's not exact science, but there's a mix to it. So certain players we marked, like Chelsea, Romelu Lukaku, you might mark him, for example. You might mark Ronaldo at United. So you make sure you go wherever you want with him, but only at key times in different parts of the game. But most managers have a sort of zonal system that relies on the entire team defending as a unit. Bielsa's teams are slightly different. They mark man-to-man. And that means that the advantage is that there's less spaces or fewer spaces for the opposition to pass into, because there's always someone tight to them. But it means if a really good team is able to beat a defender in a man-to-man marking system, they've got an overload straight away. So if this guy manages to get past Click, straight away there's an overload, 3v3 here or 3v2. And say if this guy here were to get past Robin Koch and get in behind like this, just even like a yard of space is an advantage, might offer a pass. That's another problem. It needs to be totally switched on all of the time. If a defender starts coming out from the back, that creates an overload and it's another problem they've got to deal with. But it works really well for the way Leeds play, unless something goes wrong. And this is what's been happening this season so far. So this example is the team that played against Man United at the start of the season. And one of the reasons they conceded so many goals was to do with errors related to the man-to-man marking system. Now, Calvin Phillips usually plays this 6 role we talked about before. And with him absent for this game, that was just huge for how Leeds played. The +1 system, remember how they choose their system? So they've got one striker, meant they played a back 2. Strike was the free man. Cooper was looking after this guy here. So this striker just needs to make this sort of run here to drag him out of position. And that's what's going to happen. This guy here is Bruno Fernandes. Now he's going to make this run in behind. He's going to curve his run and make this sort of run here. If Robin Koch loses him, which he does, they're in trouble. The ball is here in midfield, it goes to maybe here and then back to Lindelof. Now by the time the ball goes back to Lindelof around about here, Bruno Fernandes snips in behind like this, Cooper's dragged out of position by this guy, and before he's offside, the ball comes over the top like this, Fernandes gets in to score. Bang! Koch is at fault, he's lost his man. In a zonal system, perhaps Cooper wouldn't have been dragged by this guy and he would have been able to track the run from Fernandes, play him offside better, Struijk might be in line with him or something like that. But the man-to-man system works when it works. When there's one error, it causes problems. And you can see that in how Junior Firpo has adapted to the team so far. So he plays at left back, he'll take Dallas out of there and put Firpo in here. And one of the goals they conceded this season was Firpo following his man across the pitch in the man-to-man system. Again, he's just not quite on board, he's not 100% learned how Bielsa wants him to play and what's expected of him. So when the opposition come forward, what happens is this guy here, who's marked by Firpo, I guess they know this is going to happen. He tracks across here. I can't remember what team this is, but just bear with me. So Firpo follows him in. That's what happens. Now that has left this enormous amount of space out wide. That is bad, because Cooper now suddenly has to deal with opposition players getting into here, and they can get forward like this. Now this overload is, well, it proves fatal in the end. No one dies, but what happens is that the opposition team, they get into these sorts of positions here. They've got an overload. Leeds are tracking back as fast as they can. They're very good at recovering and getting back into position, but there's not much you can do when the opposition has this amount of space in the box. By the time Firpo gets back to help out, the ball gets fired in around about here, and it comes off Firpo and goes in the back of the goal. An unlucky on goal, like it's not, if Firpo didn't mean it, it's unlucky that's happened, but the positioning is the important part. Firpo should probably have passed his man off in this man-to-man system. It's difficult, because when he's been dragged across here, you think you want to drag this, lay him off here, let him go, someone else can deal with him. That's what a zonal or mixed system might allow him to have done. But Firpo gets dragged out of position, doesn't know quite what to do, and the team that they're playing against in this example has taken advantage with that own goal. Very unlucky. But this is the thing, the man-to-man system works really well when it works, as the zonal systems. It just looks slightly different to what you're used to seeing because not everyone does it. It reduces spaces, it reduces options for the opposition, it relies on a lot of energy. It's a high-risk strategy, same as the way they attack. It's high risk, high reward, and that's why Leeds are able to compete with a squad which isn't as good as other teams. I mean, there's no real hiding from it. Jamie Shackleton, he's fine, but he's not the best player in the entire world. Not mean to pick on Jamie Shackleton, sorry Jamie. But yeah, this is the thing. Leeds have okay players, their system works really well, they're very fun to watch, and what most managers would tend to do with a team like Leeds is sit them back in a block, defend, wait all game and try and hit in the counter, and that's it. A bit like what something like Burnley do, it's not the most fun thing to watch. I'd rather watch Leeds, and that's all I have to say about Leeds. And if you like this video and you like Leeds, give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.